brewing down south.
Come on, this is not accidental. If it is, then there is a level of incompetence that will make the history books.
Count every vote is nothing more than a trick to make people think evil Republicans are not counting him.
Want them to legislate.
I feel the need for speed.
Actor Tom Cruise wants to buzz the tower on his own. The Top Gun star will fly a plane in the upcoming sequel.
They both insisted on actually doing these stunts themselves. You know, Stallone learned to box, was getting punched in the face, ribs broken. Those were the days when actors got hurt for the role.
Jillian did a story, if you're just waking up, Jillian did a story about how Tom Cruise, for the new Top Gun movie, he wants to learn to fly a plane, so they're delaying the movie filming because he wants to go and learn to do that, and he does his own stunts a lot of times.
Didn't he hang on a wing of a plane?
Yes, he did.
On the side of the airplane. He does all those things.
Didn't he get hurt? He got hurt. Yeah.
He's very, he wants it to look real and be real. So
he has a reputation of when he's in a crowd, he goes and he shakes hands with everyone, gives everyone autographs when they come to a movie premiere, doesn't leave until he's finished doing that and saying hey to everyone who supports his career. He does his own stunts. He comes super early. He stays late.
There you go.
Hard worker.
If I was to do that, I'd be all green screen.
There you go. Well, welcome once again to Hour 2 of Inside the Actors Studio.
All right, let's talk about what's happening down in Florida.
Good
this
idea.
is big news. The recount this morning, more ballot drama brewing in the Sunshine State.
Statewide recounting is in full swing almost everywhere, but officials in Florida's largest counties are scrambling to meet Thursday's deadline.
Griff Jenkins does all his own stunts. This time he just has to stay indoors and tell us what's happening. Broward County Office of Elections, where we find Griff. Griff, last night they didn't even count. They just pulled apart staples, right?
Listen, guys, here's what's going on. They haven't even started the actual recount and tabulation, but look in the window. Fear not. They say they're going to get it done. A little bit of breaking news here. Now, where they are in this page separation is they're at the letter Y, the end of the alphabet on the Electoral Day votes. They have one more group to do. That's the vote by mail. They say there's 189,000 of those, and that separation will take until tonight before they begin the actual recount. But the Director of Planning and Development here, Joe D'Alessandro, just told me that it'll only take 15 total hours when they do the actual recount. They spent time on the front end to save time on the back end. That's why it's only going to take 15 hours for the actual tabulation, and they will meet that deadline, according to their projections, of the vote recount. Now, yesterday, we did have a very interesting moment when the election supervisor here, Dr. Brenda Snipes, came out, addressed us in the room here with the media about accusations of failing to comply with Florida law on multiple accounts. Here's what she had to say.
Good morning. The lawsuits as they are written certainly cast aspersions on my character. I've worked here for about 15 years, and I have to say this is the first time that this office or I have been under such attacks. So if we make mistakes, we own mistakes.
That Thursday deadline.
Meanwhile, the candidates, Senator Nelson and Governor Scott, just going after each other. Listen to this.
Scott cannot oversee this process in a fair and impartial way, and thus he should remove himself from any role in the recount process.
My goal is that we follow the law. We know Brenda Snipes mixed illegal ballots with legal ballots. We know they've not let party officials in. The courts have said follow the law.
Now, in neighboring Palm Beach County, the supervisor there still saying she finds it impossible to meet Thursday's deadline. Either way, all the attorneys believe we're headed for a hand recount that will begin Thursday, guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Griff. Also, when they're looking at some of these contested ballots, they're trying to figure out voter intent. And apparently they're noticing a trend, according to the Palm Beach Post. Apparently some voters who are voting for governor when choosing between Ron DeSantis and Darcy Richardson, who is running on the Reform Party, apparently they confused REF. They saw ref, as in Reform Party, and thought it was REP for Republican. And so they scribbled it out and they circled something. And so some of them are abundantly clear what the person was trying to do, but some of them, they're trying to figure out what was the person who had the marker thinking when they marked it.
Listen, if you screw up the ballot, it shouldn't count. I mean, you got to get
Correct.
it down. I mean, just
Correct.
take a second, look at the ballot.
Yeah.
And if Florida...
Go
and if-
slowly.
Ask
be
for a new
informed.
ballot.
Yeah. Ask for a new ballot. And by the way, how stupid is it that they put the Senate race at the bottom to the left and put the governor's race up here? So they didn't even, they had an atypical ballot to begin with in Broward
That's why
County.
people didn't see the governor's
Yeah.
race. They voted for the senator and didn't vote for the governor.
Or they voted for the governor, not the senator.
Because
got
it
it.
was underneath the instructions and a lot of people didn't realize it. But that falls on the Board of Supervisors for that county because
What
they're
gets
the
me-
ones who lay out the ballot.
But what's the most bizarre thing is now they want to change the rules. There were rules set in place. If you were an absentee ballot, you had to get it in by 7 o'clock on Tuesday. If you didn't, it doesn't count. And now Mark Elias, the attorney for Bill Nelson, is saying, no, we want all of them to count. That sounds great, but you can't change the rules after the game's played.
Well, the law is in Florida, if you are serving overseas or if you're overseas, and
Then it counts
you,
after,
you can
yeah.
send it in and they will accept it up to 10 days, which would be a couple more days on the clock. But now what they're suggesting is let's go ahead and have that apply to all mail-in ballots, not just the ones from overseas.
That's fine for the next election,
yeah,
but you
not
can't
this
change
one.
the laws. So this is the tweet that Mark Elias, who's the attorney for Bill Nelson, who is down by how many votes? Like 12 to 13,000 votes. His attorney says, breaking, no Floridian should have their rightful vote denied because of mail post office delays. We are suing to protect these ballots. Hashtag count all the votes.
Right, exactly. And also, they are still waiting on a judge to figure out whether or not the Nelson people are challenging the exact match law where your signature on the provisional ballot has to match your signature on your voter registration. And Mr. Elias also says that he doesn't like the fact that non-experts are judging whether or not it is a match. He has said we have seen states have significant match laws struck down as unconstitutional. So he's suggesting it's probably unconstitutional in Florida as well.
And I think part of the fun of voting and having your voice heard is finding out on election night. We all stay up really late to see what these votes, when they come in and when these races are called. If you aren't, or you're still counting votes after 10 days, and I understand if it's super close, you have to do that. And it is down there. But if you're still counting votes, if they change it for going forward, we're still counting ballots 10 days after, it kind of takes the fun out of election night.
Yeah, well, I'm willing to take the fun out to get it right, though, Ainsley, right?
Well, I
and we should just
understand
go
that. If
back
it's
to
really
election day
close,
being
you have to
election
do
day.
it.
Ultimately, though, the reason the Scott people had a problem was because they've insinuated that a whole bunch of extra ballots have come in after the voting stopped. You know, there have been all sorts of stories, although yesterday one of the judges, when they threw out Mr. Scott's request to impound the machines, he said, you know, you guys are talking about all this voter fraud. If you've got any evidence of voter fraud, let's see it. Here's Rush Limbaugh on all of this.
Count every vote is a dog whistle for we need to find more votes, not votes that have been cast.
The effort here is to make it look like Rick Scott and DeSantis and the Republicans are trying to not count ballots. That's the purpose of this. Count every vote is not really a requirement. It is meant for the media to use that as a psychological message to the great unwashed that somebody's trying to not count every vote. And of course, who's standing for this and calling for it? Why, our good friends, the Democrats, when in fact it's all caca. Count every vote is nothing more than a trick to make people think dastardly, evil Republicans are not counting every vote.
Well, it is curious why 65 counties got it right, and these 2 counties that they're Democratic counties, right?
Yep.
Aren't they Democratic?
Yes.
Okay, so why these Democratic counties? They're not happy with he's saying they're not happy with
Right.
the votes, and so they want to find new votes.
And look, for example, the headline in the New York Times is almost if they're cheerleading for whatever candidate wants the recount. For example, here's it does say news analysis, but Maggie Haberman and Jeremy Peters have this story: GOP fears over Senate edge drive push to discredit recount. So you can't possibly actually want a justification with Scott with a 14,000 vote lead, which was once 60,000. You can't do that if for legitimate purposes. It has to be because the GOP has to discredit you. They have an objective there.
The Washington Post headline: Republicans fan unfounded worries about voter fraud in close races, as you can see in the middle. And then screen right, Huffington Post: Republicans are casting doubt on normal election processes for the sake of winning.
Well, really, with the Brian Kemp, Georgia situation, now they're going over the judges extending till Friday, even though he's got a 50,000 vote lead in the governor's race. I don't understand.
And he says mathematically she can't win.
Yeah.
They get to figure it out at the local level. And that's what they're doing.
And well, in Arizona, did you see Republicans protesting? No. Martha McSally last night had a lead on Election Day. It slowly turned into a 36,000 vote deficit, and last night she conceded.
Yeah.
Because of the incoming.
Start today in the trial for Mexican drug lord El Chapo. He's facing 17 charges, including drug trafficking, murder conspiracy, and money laundering. The trial could take 4 months and is expected to shed light on his jailbreaks, use of submarines to ship drugs, and his iconic gold-plated AK-47. El Chapo will be escorted by armed guards to and from court in New York City. A community pays tribute to a fallen American hero with a 400-pound American flag. Just look at this. Major Brent Taylor's Gold Star wife says it's a comfort.
To see that banner flying is something of...
How is it flying? Is it attached to the side of the cliff and then...
I don't know.
They're holding on to it.
Yeah.
Oh, they're holding on.
It is 150 feet long.
Wow.
All right, thanks, Jillian. 13 minutes after the hour, New Florida recount is bringing back memories of what happened back in 2000. One Army vet says his vote in that election was stolen, and Brenda Snipes covered it up. Yeah, the same Brenda Snipes. He joins us live to explain.
And one woman goes out of her marriage with a bang.
Some chaos in Florida as a massive vote count is underway, and it seems eerily familiar to the infamous 2000 presidential recount. Our next guest voted by absentee ballot in that election while serving in the Army and says Broward County stole his vote and Brenda Snipes covered it up. Joining us right now, retired U.S. Army Colonel Dave Lowry joins us now to explain. Colonel, thank you very much for joining us today from Jacksonville.
Great to be with you this morning, Steve.
Thank you. All right, so during the 2000 presidential election, you voted absentee ballot, and you sent it back via UPS so you would have a date stamp. And what happened to your vote?
Well, UPS records prove it was delivered on time. However, Broward County fraudulently stamped it as received on November 16th, 9 days after the election deadline.
Why'd they do that?
I have no idea. And in fact, I never even know about it. If it weren't from a call from Chris Drew from the New York Times 7 months after the election, he's the one who told me that my name was on a list of thousands of Florida voters whose ballots had not been counted.
I don't get why they wouldn't count it. It was there on the day, on actual election day. It was stamped. Somebody named Benson received it. I just don't get why they did that. Ultimately, you feel, though, that your vote was stolen, don't you?
Well, I was stunned by the revelation when Chris Drew called me. So the next couple of years, I tried to figure out what happened. Unfortunately, the Broward County Supervisor of Elections office thwarted me at every turn. They delayed and stonewalled for 18 months until the statute of limitations expired.
Right. And then they said, you're right, there was a problem. You feel that Brenda Snipes, who was Board of Supervisors then, she should be removed from this job after the recount, right?
Miriam Oliphant was the supervisor of elections back then, and she was removed by former Governor Jeb Bush for incompetence and mismanagement. So I think this is just a symptom. It's been going on for decades, and it needs to stop. I don't think Rick Scott can remove her because his hands are tied.
Right.
He has a conflict of interest, but I think Governor Jeb Bush said it right in a tweet the other day. She needs to be removed from office after the recount.
Well, a lot of people are saying that. Let's see what happens. Dave Lowry, retired colonel, 30-year Army vet. Sir, thank you very much for your service.
Could I make one more point real quick, Steve?
Super fast.
Super fast. American voters, please, if you use an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot, please don't use regular mail. Use a system that has a track. Use certified mail.
Right.
It tracks it.
So that you know exactly when it was delivered. A great point.
That's how I won my case.
All right. Dave, thank you very much for putting that in. All right.
Thanks,
We're going to step
Steve.
aside. More Fox and Friends in 2 minutes. 4 here in New York City. Now, news by the numbers. First up, more than $444,000. That's how much American men say they would like to make in their dream job, according to a new survey. Women say they'd be happy with $278,000. That's what makes people happy. Next, $100. That's how much a new monthly pass costs to get inside the Golden State Warriors game. But it doesn't come with a seat. Inside the arena, fans have to watch from the stadium's bars and the restaurants as well. And finally, 76 years. That's how long it took that World War II and Korean War veteran to graduate high school. 93-year-old Sam Stansel received his diploma from his Tennessee high school after dropping out in 1942 to serve the U.S. of A. And that is some of your news by the numbers.
That was some great walking.
Good job.
Meanwhile, 25 minutes after the hour, after a weekend full of meetings with world leaders in France, President Trump returned home with a message for our European allies. Pay the United States for protection or protect yourself.
In a series of tweets, the president said, in part, massive amounts of money spent on protecting other countries, and we get nothing but trade deficits and losses. It is time that these very rich countries either pay the United States for its great military protection or protect themselves, and trade must be made free and fair. Here to react is retired U.S. Marine Corps bomb technician Joey Jones, who lost both of his legs while serving our amazing country over in Afghanistan. Thank you for your service and for joining us, Joey. What was your reaction to the president's tweet?
Thank you and good morning. I like it. I'm glad that we finally have a president that's challenging some of these antiquated arrangements we have. Provided a few exceptions, most of the arrangements we have are as much for our own strategic advantage as they are the security of that host country. For example, in Japan, we actually pay to be there. They don't pay us, we pay them to use the bases we have there. But there's no secret that Afghanistan is as much a pivotal strategic place as the south of France or the Pacific Islands were 60, 70 years ago. So we need to relook at these things and take a look at why we are where we are. It's no secret that our wars are now fought in the minds of people that are radical terrorists as much as it ever was in Southern Europe or in some of these other places. So to say that, you know, we shouldn't just be there because we're there and we've always been there is a good way to look at it. And I think that these countries need to understand that when these advantages start drying up, like intelligence gathering or securing trade opportunities, we lose reasons to really want to be there.
Joey, I'm outraged what Macron did over the weekend. Look, he's sitting there making a speech telling us that nationalism is the opposite of patriotism. Don't worry about us and nationalism. We're bailing them out. That's what I learned over 100 years of war and World War II, and then followed up by World War I, followed up by World War II. Number two is he's sitting there. He wants to put a European force together. Go ahead and do it. Why would that be a threat to us? But the problem is they can't do that. They don't want to spend any money on their defense.
Yeah, let me tell Macron something. Listen, America is the greatest country in the world, and it's not just rhetoric, it's true. And let me explain to you why. It's not because of the power of our military, our riches, or even our system of government. It's because we're the only place in the world where we all look different, yet we love each other anyway. When someone falls down, we pick them back up. The things that we believe in this country are that this is hard to do, yet we're doing it. Freedoms are inherently dangerous, but they're worth it. And so before you point a finger at us and anything along the lines of calling us a villain, you need to understand that we exist because you all couldn't get it right. We exist because of monarchies and totalitarian governments in Europe. We exist because we believe in being free, regardless of what you look like, where you pray, who you love, or where you eat. We exist because we choose to. That's something that's very special, and they should continue learning from that before pointing fingers at us.
Because of men and women like you, Joey. This is what the president just tweeted out 37 minutes ago. Emmanuel Macron suggests building its own army to protect Europe against the U.S., China, and Russia. But it was Germany in World Wars I and II. How did that work out for France? They were standing to learn German in Paris. Starting to learn German in Paris before the U.S. came along. Pay for NATO or not. Your thoughts?
Listen, the French military has been a friend of ours and an integral part of why we are here today. But we pulled our part. We rescued France from Nazis. So we have a tight relationship over hundreds of years. And to have a president in either country challenging that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think that Macron needs to understand that we've been a partner and one that France inherently needs.
Yeah, by the way, we probably don't win the Revolutionary War without France, so we get it. The big picture, he's got 26% approval rating. He thought he'd pick up a few points by beating up on President Trump. For me, it blows up in his face. Joe, Joey Jones, thanks so much.
Thanks, Joey.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. A terrifying dark red sky covering parts of California this morning as deadly wildfires carve a path of destruction out there. We are live on the ground coming up next.
And what is the White House saying about the massive recount underway in Florida right now? We're going to ask Senior Communication Advisor Mercedes Schlapp that, and then we assume she'll answer.
Coast.
I know.
Okay. Non-stop here. Meanwhile, 36 minutes after the hour, Jillian, you have other news, including that migrant caravan.
That's right. The migrant caravan with over 3,500 people is inching closer to the U.S. border. The group reaching the city of Guadalajara by hopping on trucks and cars. Officials say their intended destination is San Diego. U.S. Sector Chief Manuel Padilla Jr. of Texas joined us earlier to explain how troops and border agents are preparing.
What we are shooting for is an orderly situation. We will not tolerate the crowds, the type of chaos that you saw in southern Mexico. That is not going to happen.
Hopefuls for 2020. Failed congressional candidate Richard Ojeda, who lost his 2018 bid in West Virginia, announcing he's running for president. And this week, vocal anti-Trumper Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell had this to say.
I know you were in Iowa this weekend. You're running for president?
Very well received there. They want new energy, new ideas, and a new confidence. And that really, I think, emboldened me to make a decision soon.
More than 36 Democrats have floated the idea of taking on President Trump in 2020. Let's look at your headlines, so stay tuned for
look
more
at
news
that.
on that.
There's not enough stage.
It looks like the Republicans a few years ago. There were 17 candidates.
Only double.
Right.
Meanwhile, Mercedes Schlapp knows all about what it's like to have 24 people run for the White House because they went to CPAC and you guys were there running
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
So your strategic communications now at the White House. Mercedes, this morning, the president tweeted out just about Macron and some of the blowback from his trip overseas. How would you characterize from the insider perspective how that went?
Well, it was clearly a successful trip. The president, along with Macron, had a productive meeting. They spoke about trade. They spoke about NATO. As we know, the president has talked about many times the importance of sharing the burden of paying for NATO. Yep. And the U.S. has always paid more than these other nations. And so he has sent a strong message to our European allies. And we have seen some changes and some positive shifts coming from our allies to pay more to NATO. We need their support.
We do. All right, Mercedes, let's talk a little bit about what's happening here in the United States. Down in Florida, all eyes are on the counting, the recounting. Does the White House have confidence that what is happening down south is fair?
Well, we have confidence that Rick Scott will be the next Florida senator. He's leading now by 12,000 votes, and that's going to be a hard gap to close. And so I think we've already seen with the Broward County supervisor that there have been voting irregularities for nearly 2 decades. And so, again, they've missed court deadlines, and I think we're going to get to a point where we are going to see Rick Scott coming over to Washington to be the next Florida senator.
Today? I think he was
well,
talking
I mean,
about
this is a process. I mean, they have to finish up the process. But I think there's been a lot of criticism with how Broward County has handled these ballots. And it's, look, I remember the days. My husband was down there. I was down there in Florida during the Bush v. Gore recount, and that was a lot closer. This is 12,000 votes we're talking about. That's a big gap to close.
Whose responsibility is it now to fix what's going on down there? Because it's shocking that 65 counties can get it right, and these 2 counties continuously get it wrong.
No kidding. I mean, that is a state function, and so that's why you have the Secretary of State who would handle that in these variety of states.
One of the things the president tweeted out yesterday was that there was, I think it was something about fraud or these, suspicious ballots showing up. Has there been any evidence of that? I think this is primarily a state responsibility. The federal government does provide support.
I know through the Secretary of Homeland Security that they spent a lot of time working on election security to make sure our infrastructure would be safe, so there wouldn't be any outside meddling. There's always concern about voter fraud. And so I think the key is obviously that in conjunction with state, working with the federal government to make sure that this doesn't happen. But we always have to keep an eye on it, because one of the greatest rights that we have and privileges is that of voting. And we need to ensure voter integrity at the state and local and federal level.
Do you look at the win by Kristen Sinema in Arizona to grab a seat from Republicans as legitimate?
Yes, I mean, I think at this point what we're seeing is that, again, there's a huge gap there in terms of Senate-elect Sinema basically gaining ground and really making sure that that gap had widened. So at this point, it looks like Arizona, she seems to have won that race. And again, one of the things President Trump has talked about is bipartisanship and working with Democrats.
All right. And it looks like Mr. Whitaker, the acting AG, could face a court challenge today because he was appointed illegally. The White House stands behind him 100%, right?
No question. The president and the Department of Justice leadership has confidence in Matt Whitaker. Matt Whitaker, look, he has a full and legal authority under the Vacancy Reform Act of 1998, where if it's someone that's been a senior official as well as has been there for more than 90 days, could serve as acting attorney general.
All right. Mercedes Schlapp joins us from the North Lawn. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mercedes.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
All right. Well, from the White House to your house, I'm making Mrs. Ducey and I are continuing our book tour. We're going to stop by one more set of bookstores this weekend, signing copies, taking pictures down in Florida. We're going to be at Books A Million in Orange Park Mall Friday at 7 p.m., Barnes & Noble Colonial Park Mall in Orlando Saturday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Sunday Barnes & Noble in Palm Beach Gardens at 1 o'clock. We know a lot of you are buying it as a holiday gift, so if you're not in Florida, go ahead and pick it up wherever you buy books, Barnes & Noble or Amazon or anything like that. Great recipes for Thanksgiving.
This is extended gift for Christmas.
Extended tour by popular demand.
That's right.
He said he was done and they pulled you back in.
Number one on the New York Times bestseller list.
Thanks to all of you.
Right.
Anyway.
Meanwhile, all right, so Steve Sieben, Florida over the weekend. 17 minutes before the top of the hour. Now this. Violence erupting in the Middle East overnight as tensions between Israel and Hamas reach a boiling point. We are live in Israel. Is war next?
Israeli Special Forces raid in Gaza.
Trey Yanks joins us live right now for more from Israel, where an apartment building was hit by a deadly airstrike. Trey, what's the latest?
Well, good morning, Brian, Ainsley, and Steve. Here in Israel, after dozens of rockets have been fired in the past few hours, and overnight hundreds were fired into southern Israel, the Israeli military is ramping up their response inside Gaza in an effort to deter Hamas, the group currently in control of the Gaza Strip. Amid those strikes, the Israelis have responded to, in the past 24 hours, the Israelis have struck crucial Gazan infrastructure, including a number of Hamas media buildings and multiple apartment buildings inside the Gaza Strip. A number of buildings here in Israel were also hit, including a bakery in Sderot, and here in Ashkelon, an apartment building. I do want to show you behind me. You can see this building completely destroyed by a rocket fired from the Gaza Strip. A lot of people were in this building at the time, and unfortunately, one man did lose his life in this attack happening early this morning. You can see all around here there is shrapnel that has hit the walls of the buildings just next door to this one. We did go inside the building earlier today. The Fox News crew inside the building, we saw blood on the floor, and we also saw a number of large pieces of shrapnel, some of those pieces hitting humans here in southern Israel. Now, in response, Brian, Ainsley, and Steve, to these attacks that are being fired from Gaza, the Israeli military is using precision strikes. We did speak with a Hamas official inside Gaza who says that the group there will be responding to any future strikes by the Israelis. Israelis today telling us here in the city of Ashkelon that they are prepared in case the Gazans do decide to ramp things up here in the region. We'll certainly stay tuned throughout the day to see what develops. Brian, Ainsley, Steve.
Wow. Right. Trey, thank you very much. Live report from Israel.
A few days ago, we were talking about some type of peace and easing the barriers, and now this. Meanwhile, 11 minutes before the top of the hour, French President Emmanuel Macron blasting nationalism in a swipe at President Trump and this country. Stuart Varney is from Europe. We won't get specific. He says when it comes to nationalism, Macron has it all wrong. Stuart here next hour.
Plus, a new poll says the majority of Democrats believe Republicans are racist, bigoted, and sexist. She, as you can see, is coming up
How do our political parties see each other? According to a new online poll, 61% of Democrats say that Republicans are racist, bigoted, and sexist, while 31% of Republicans feel the same way about Democrats. And this was done before the midterm elections. So what does this say about the future of our country? Here to react is Tammy Bruce, Fox News contributor and president of Independent Women's Voices.
Hi there.
Good morning to you, Tammy.
Good morning.
Why is that? That makes me sad.
Well, look, and this is what we've been fighting. The larger media conversation is constantly demonizing, right? I mean, you see this framework through broadcast media, cable media as well, the newspapers, and it is the extreme. It's about, presenting the worst case scenario about certainly Republicans. And then, of course, there's coverage of the attacks and the mobs on the Democrat side. But the problem is, of course, is the communication framework. And these are online polls. And I contend that, and I've been saying this for now over a year, that Americans are not as divided as the media is telling us we are.
You don't think it's true?
I don't think it is. It's a more exciting argument, of course. It gets people nervous and more attuned to want to watch television because it's more dangerous. But I think Americans see very well what's going on and are very reasonable in a framework. But look, the Republicans have to try to match and push back on this argument about who they are, right? I mean, look, I'm a Democrat. I come from the left. I work now with conservatives and Republicans all the time, and nothing could be further from the truth. But it also comes down to the argument of, right, you don't want to just judge people based on what they say. You have to judge them based on what they do. And when you look as an example at what President Obama did in the country, 3.7 million women, as an example, fell into poverty. You had the highest poverty rate in I think it was like 65 years. The bottom line is, while you could like President Obama as a person and admire him, but then you have to look at the result of their work.
So he could run saying, I'm for women, but if you look at the statistics, it's not necessarily
That's exactly right. And especially when you're hiring someone to do a job. If you're looking for a brother-in-law or a son-in-law, maybe it's a different standard. But you're looking for someone who does a job. President Trump, on the other hand, is constantly attacked, right, when it comes to women and conservatives on the issues of race. And yet here we've got remarkable numbers for women. You've got an extraordinary the lowest unemployment rate in our history, at least I think in the last 65 or 75 years. You've got 1,000 women a day, I believe, establishing their own businesses. My group, the Independent Women's Voice, started up a website called Better Off Now to collect the statistics and the facts about what's happening in the economy for people of color, for women. And it is an extraordinary renaissance. It is a genuine reformation when it comes to the quality of our lives, the money that we have, the number of people who have been moved off food stamps and have more control over their lives because of the economy of President Trump that has lifted up women in a way that we haven't seen in an extraordinarily long period of
facto
time.
non-verbo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, words.
Yeah.
Deeds, not words, right?
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, Tammy, for
My
being
pleasure.
with us. All right. New ballot drama brewing in Florida. One of the recounts just got delayed again, and we are live in Broward County to tell you about that coming up next. Plus, Mike Rowe and Dana Lash, they're both here live in the next hour.